A lot of killers. We got a lot of killers. Why you think our country's so innocent?
Remember when I gave advanced defensive weapon technology with no casualties to both Russia and the USA for a war to come? Remember when Russia installed it on their fleet of warships in their 5P-42 fill-in and armoured shields for counter-terrorism operations, and went public with it on the same day I did? Remember when I did a video explaining how the technology works in detail? Remember when police came to my door asking about that technology in my armoured suit and asking for counter-terrorism intel I had been sent in to the FBI? Remember when all the people who doubted me shit their pants and ran away after proving it was real? I doubt anyone understands, at least at this point, but I had to release it in a specific way, so as to avoid myself being taken out in the process. Oh, don't mind me. I'm just a crazy or a liar, and I don't exist. Meanwhile, the Canadian government only days ago tried to LARP as no one in particular who doesn't exist to justify a failed coup in their own country. I could go on and on and on about that. It's as though I somehow know ahead of time what's going to happen. Was I there to see it for myself? Do I have secret access to things? Is it all of the above and more? Check the little message at the start of this video and check the dates. A warning I gave 5 days before it happened. Now understand, there is no new world order. It's conspiracy nutter nonsense. There is the old world order, or simply the old world, or whatever else you want to call it, which is not a secret group, but basically a political landscape before the 2 world wars. You can call it the law of the jungle even. A place where there was no single world government, no mediator between nations, and very few alliances between nations. A world full of chaos and wars where only the strongest and most oppressive rule. After the First World War, the first mediator between nations and the first attempt at a world government was the League of Nations. Not a secret group, but an open public group. A type of new world order, in the literal sense. It was entirely corrupt, and despite its sole existence being to prevent another world war, its corruption and greed caused World War II. If you don't know why, then you need to start over learning history from scratch, from an alternative, heavily censored source that the narrators of history don't want you to know about. Starting with the Treaty of Versailles. After World War II, the League of Nations was disbanded and replaced with a second world order attempt called the United Nations. Again, not a secret mystery group. In the early days, the United Nations at least built the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is the only meaningful thing they ever did. And mind you, they had to add Article 30 at the end to prevent its obvious abuse and intended abuse. And after doing the UDHR, they were then quickly overrun and taken over by corruption. To the point where many founding members of the United Nations have now abandoned it today or have been kicked out and replaced with someone else, like Saudi Arabia, who was put in charge as head of human rights and tasked with investigating itself over the world's worst human rights abuses, more than once. Now understand, a world government is a good and absolutely necessary thing. But done wrong by corrupt people, it can be a bad thing and a trip beyond the point of no return. We have had all of history for politicians, scientific experts, academics, philosophers, gurus, and even the general population to make this work. But time has shown, time and time again, consistently, that not one of these groups have what it takes to make it work. And yet it is absolutely necessary for there to be a future and any fairness in this world. While the United Nations is one toothless New World Order of sorts, there are two other New World Orders in a Cold War with each other since World War II. These are the actual world orders of significance today. As for the United Nations, the United Nations isn't stopping wars, but causing them. And the only thing that is preventing an open and direct world war is nuclear weapons held by both sides in the main two world orders. When World War II ended, it didn't really end. It just went underground through covert means and proxy wars and smoke and mirrors. Political chess behind the scenes where no one can openly strike or everyone on all sides gets nuked. A stalemate where the moment either side gets too much power, they will use nuclear weapons and nuke the world to prevent anyone else from having it. Should add, someone else from happening is a thing they want to stop, all sides. But the two main world orders, New World Orders, actual groups and their conspiring alliances, are not secret but open and public and can be given many different labels. For now, let's just call them the communists and the democracies. Communists are evil despots who want to wield and abuse extreme powers and set up any kind of system that prevents anyone else from contesting their power. So they want to get rid of the middle class and have a two-class system. One class is a rigid hierarchy of power among a small few. The second class is the equality class, where everyone is equally powerless. That's what they mean by equality, equally powerless, and can never be allowed to resist the authority of a single party government that has no rivals. There are only two kinds of people in communism: absolute power and absolute slave. Because communism has such a bad name, they go by many other names now, like their opposite, socialism. They say that they are democratic socialists, when they are in fact despotic communists. Yeah, you got some messages on Discord while I'm talking. Anyway, they're in fact despotic communists, and they call everyone a Nazi, which literally means National Socialists, yet identify publicly as the very thing they accuse everyone else of being. Like, they say they're socialists, but they go around calling everyone else a socialist. As well, that's a bad thing. For these people, up is down, left is right, everything is opposite. To understand their secret code talk, just reverse everything they say. For example, they preach the mantra, love, peace and unity, but their actions are the opposite. To decode their code talk, what they really preach is the opposite. Hate, war and division. Love, peace and unity. Hate, war and division. This accurately represents their actions. They say peace, love and unity when they burn, loot and murder, while they burn, loot and murder. Mind you, that love, hate, war, peace, unity and division are not inherently good or evil. But they require context to make them good or evil. It could go either way depending on context. Beware those who come in the name of peace, because they are trying to pacify you and shut down your defenses. These communists, one of the many names to give these people, are a very evil group of people who more accurately fit with New World Order conspiracy nonsense. At least somewhat. They do evil, they do conspire for world domination, but their plans and actions are far worse than any conspiracy theory. And they aren't the only group in the world who is trying to dominate the world, for better or worse. Remember, a world government is typically a good and necessary thing, but can be a bad and lethal thing if done wrong. And for communists, they mean to do every evil imaginable. Communism, and the many other names it operates under, such as LGBT and feminism, is orchestrated by a secret ancient guild of thieves that I'm not allowed to name here, or this video will get banned. And this ancient guild of thieves is the real conspiracy behind so-called New World Order. You know who they are and what they call themselves. Just replace one letter in New World Order with one of the first 10 letters of the alphabet. The other main New World Order is an alliance between the democracies of the world, basically white people. White democracies are the only people who have any morals in the world, the only people who stand in the way of communists and their world domination goals. Everyone else just doesn't give a shit, even if it means their own eventual demise, because all they care about is their own self-serving, short-sighted, immediate greed. In a democracy, hypothetically at least, power is constantly shuffled between those who wield power, so only so long as they have the support of the people they rule over. Else they get voted out. But democracies are like an apple that had a worm in it from the very beginning. The worm is the same people behind communism, the secret guild of thieves, the real bigger conspirators in the world. Not the only, but the bigger conspirators of the world, the ones who somewhat have historically controlled most things, and now it's all falling apart now. The secret guild of thieves. With ill-gotten money, they bribe who they can in Western white democracies and everywhere else as well, and get secret leverage on everyone they can on every side, even each other. And you go along with either side with this secret group of conspiracies, or they and their bribed officials and leveraged pawns take you out from every angle. Just watch what happens when you try to out these people. Suddenly, war is declared on you from every side, with every bribe. They've conspired to secretly rot out and take over democracies, to the point where they're completely dysfunctional now. And while democracies do still stand, they're just a shell of their original and intended form. Through all the leverage and briberies, only those who sell out are allowed to reach positions of power in a democracy. But the system, there's still a democratic system in operation that they're trying to weaken and wear down and override and replace with communism. But there's many obstacles in the way. The officials in a democracy are all owned on every side. But what they don't own is the general population who believe in democratic values. Or the white people who prevent them from fighting back. Or the white people, and they prevent the white people. They try to prevent the white people from fighting back. The officials, to prevent them from fighting back, the officials have to put on a big act to make it look like the general population can eventually win against this corruption without fighting. Just delay them every step of the way, as long as they can, these white people, right? Anything to prevent them from fighting back, while you weaken them from every angle, slowly, progressively, in a war of attrition. But it's long past the point of no return, and democracies are in their final days. There's also another side from the old world order. Islam. Islam was reinvented less than 100 years ago in 1924, where they created a single Quran version for everyone called the Cairo edition. Before that, there were dramatically different versions of the Quran, and Muslims were massively at war against each other. They couldn't unite under a single banner, so that was the point, to unite them under a single banner. The people I am not allowed to name and criticise tried to revive Islam and use it as a sacrificial puppet to attack white democracies. But understand, Islam is only a threat because of those who hold the puppet strings, that secret guild of thieves. Without secretly funding and assisting Muslims behind the scenes, Muslims will quickly fade into nothing like they did when the Ottoman Empire fell. Islam is self-defeating and cannot sustain itself. It is simply being used as a sacrificial puppet. But because they were given too much power in the United Nations, Muslims betrayed their masters like they always do, and somewhat dominate the United Nations today. But the United Nations is a toothless dog with no bite and no real power anymore. Communists know that democracies are at their weakest. Through decades of proxy wars, of attrition to weaken every white democracy from every angle, this is their one chance to strike a mortal wound and finish them off for good. This is why communists have secretly funded coup attempts in every white democracy. With organisations like Black Lives Matter and Antifa. These groups didn't just appear out of nowhere for no particular reason at no particular time. They're very predictable and simple tactics used over and over for a long time. You see the same thing happen in all the communist takeover of virtually every country, especially white countries. Same predictable actions, the same tactics, everything. But the problem is, while white democracies are in their final moments, so are communists, even more so. This was their last and only chance at winning this war as both sides become desperate. Remember, both sides have nuclear weapons too. They threw everything they had, the communists threw everything they had at this coup attempt, especially in the USA. Just recently, the Canadian government tried to stop resistance and do a coup in Canada while pinning their own crimes on me personally, the founder of Anonymous, and more. After the communists and their overlords, who I cannot name, failed in their coup attempt, all they ended up with was, in the USA at least, all they ended up with was Joe Biden, a sworn slave to the people I cannot name. The most incompetent politician who ever lived, who can't even coherently say a single pre-scripted sentence. It was all they got out of throwing everything they had at white democracies. That's the best they could come up with. And all it's done is undo all their propaganda lies and reveal their true colours for everyone to see. Biden's continuation as the president of the USA only hurts his own masters with every day he remains president. And they can't get rid of him and replace him with Kamala Harris, or it'll be even worse. And when they do lose him, they lose their last stranglehold on the USA. In this global coup attempt of white democracies, the communists and their masters wasted so much, pulling every leverage, string and bribe they could, that they had nothing left, no more tricks up their sleeve. They urgently needed to get funding, money, and therefore power back. Then coronavirus happened, magically. It doesn't matter whether the virus was deliberate or accidental. What matters is what they did with it. Out of desperation, this is what they do with every scenario. They try to make the most out of every scenario. Every desperate scenario they use to their advantage and grasp at power and money and stuff. So out of desperation, they use the coronavirus situation to push for forced vaccines and lockdowns to weaken everyone down to their level while profiteering from it as much as possible. But they had to do so many bribes in the process that it wasn't enough. And they are desperate because as the world crumbles, they do even more so. Like rats in a sinking ship, turning on each other, selling each other out to save themselves, not sure who they can trust anymore, scared of their own shadow, as all their evil schemes and alliances fall apart, like the two towers. But this isn't just happening to communists, it's also happening to the sold-out officials in white countries, white democracies. who are also using the virus situation to grasp at extreme powers and stop local resistance to their own corruption, which of course is sourced by the same people behind communism. These lockdowns, as I'm sure most people at least suspect by now, have nothing to do with stopping the virus and only serve to intentionally cripple everyone and destroy the middle class and make them powerless and unable to resist the government, just like the lower class, to remove the middle class. The middle class is a vast valley between the powerful and the powerless, and that valley is the only place where anyone can resist total government control. While corrupt communists and the corrupt officials in white democracies fight each other, caused by the same thieves behind both, they both have the same ultimate goal in mind: to create a dystopia of extreme and total government control, entrenched so deeply that no one can ever rise up to challenge them. Surveillance state is key to this too. Ultimately, these corrupt people on both sides have the same goals. And the only people in the world who can challenge them are the white middle class in white democracies, the very people who are under attack from every angle, surrounded by monsters on all sides. Monsters pretending to be victims. Majorities pretending to be the minority. Look around you. All sides, all world orders, old and new, are desperate and making mistakes all over the place. For a reason. What they're doing is not working, and they know they've already lost. They're scared of something, scared of someone. Something and someone they refuse to name and won't acknowledge even exists. They're trying so desperately and openly to censor everything and control the narrative that the truth is in plain sight, in the obvious fact of what you aren't allowed to say and what narratives you must absolutely believe, or else. You say a certain word, a certain name, a certain topic, a certain claim, and they start sweating, panicking, and losing their shit, and it's blatantly obvious to all. What are they so afraid of? Understand that it will not get better. It needs to get worse, until you face the reason why. They're all of the position that if they can't have the world, no one can. With the threat of nuclear weapons on top of that. They will nuke the world. If they can't have it, no one can. They will nuke the whole world. And if you don't step up and do the right thing, it will soon all end. While Russia invades Ukraine, China invades Taiwan. Expect a cascade effect. The communists will consume others to sustain themselves and get back the power they lost, but remain perpetually hungry like a vampire, with a bottomless stomach, like pouring water into a cup with the bottom cut out. And unless both the communist and the corrupted officials in white democracies are both taken out from within, they will nuke everyone in the end. And just to add, the alternatives like anarchists are communists in disguise. There is no alternative outside of the one that I offered all along for a very long time. Russia and China both have the same history of communism and covering up for each other, and they are both at war with white democracies, the last and only bastion of good in the world. Don't think that the legacy of communism ended in Russia with the fall of the USSR in 1991. Evil conspirators in the world, whether it be communists or otherwise, and all of the alternative names they use to confuse and hide their secret dealings, all unite together to take out the only people who stand in their way: the straight, white male. And like I said before many times over, the world will burn. Nation against nation, men against women, brother against sister, mother against son. The fires, the storms, the floods, the sun, and the stars. But unless those days are cut short, no one will survive. not even me. And here I am, sick, dying, at the bottom of a well, at the town square. I could have solved all of this so easily, but instead I'm going to die slowly and painfully, because mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the greatest hypocrite of all? Don't mind me, I'm no one. I don't exist.